Nora Roberts is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of more than 420 novels, including Nightwork, Legacy, The Becoming, Hideaway, The Chronicles of the One trilogy, and many more. She is also the author of the best-selling In Death series written under the pen name J.D. Robb. There are more than 500 million copies of her books in print. As you can imagine, Nora has received numerous accolades through the years. She was the very first inductee into the Romance Writers of America Hall of Fame. She was also awarded that organization's Lifetime Achievement Award, which was later renamed the RWA Nora Roberts Lifetime Achievement Award. Time magazine named her one of its 100 most influential people in 2007, and the New Yorker has dubbed Nora America's favorite novelist. Welcome, Nora, and thanks for joining us on Life Excellence.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Nora, I'm always fascinated by how people start out in their chosen careers, and I just couldn't wait to get on this show with you. When did you first start writing, and how did that evolve into publishing your very first novel?
Well, I always loved to read. I come from a family of readers. Very lucky there. So books and stories were always a part of my life, and I thought everybody made up stories in their head, so I never really thought about being a writer. And then I was snowbound with 2 preschoolers in the blizzard of '79. I live in a rural area, back a lane about a quarter of a mile, and 3 feet of snow, no morning kindergarten. I was stuck. And so I just started, and I got a notebook and a pencil and started to write down stories, and I fell in love with the process and just kept at it.
Since. And today, of course, Nora, you're one of the world's most successful novelists. I read that since 1999, and you can tell me if this is true, I read that every one of your novels since then has become a New York Times bestseller, that the total now is up to some 180 total novels that have ranked on that list, and that 53 of them, and this is dated information, but at the time, 53 of them debuted in the #1 spot. I'm sure the numbers are even more impressive today. Do you know how many New York Times bestsellers you've had, or have you lost count because there have been so many?
No, I never really kept count. Other people do that. I just write the books.
Well, of course, most authors will never be able to relate to that level of success, as even having one New York Times bestseller for an author is a tremendous accomplishment, as you know. I'd like to ask you about something, though, that everyone can relate to, and that's rejection. So you wrote for a while before you were able to sell your first manuscript. How did you overcome the early rejection as you were writing, and it probably continued after that snowstorm that you were describing before you finally got published? And what advice do you have for anyone who feels so strongly about something they believe in, whether it's a book that they've written, or a business idea, but they're encountering difficulty convincing others that it's a great thing?
Well, if you give up, it's gone. You don't have a chance if you give up. And I really loved the process. I really just loved to write. So even when I wasn't selling, couldn't get anybody to buy my stuff, I just wrote another book because I really loved doing it. And I kept sending them in, Hope Springs. And, then I hit, and I got lucky enough to sell a book, and just went on from there. But if you really love something, then you do it. Whether you do it because you're selling your product or your art or yourself, whatever it is, if you stop, your chances go down to 0.
Did you ever think that one of those books that you were writing would eventually become a New York Times bestseller, or would be that
That was
widely
real.
read?
That was real pie in the sky stuff. It was amazing to sell a book and then to see the actual physical copy of it with my name on it. Those were all amazing things. And then to keep selling, and then to eventually hit the Times list was huge. And then that didn't happen overnight. That happened over the course of years and a lot of books.
How long was it between the time that you started writing during the snowstorm and when your first book was published?
I started writing in February of '79. That's the blizzard. And my first book came out in May of '81.
Okay.
Yes, May of '81.
Okay. So you weren't an overnight success, but you didn't have to wait too long. I think some
No,
people wait a
that's
lifetime,
actually
don't they?
fairly quickly. But at that time, I because I had two small children, and I love to read. I could chain them down for a nap and read a category romance, uh, which was Harlequin. That was pretty much it. And so I started writing that, something that I was enjoying and understood. And I got to have a lot of mothers that were in my exact situation. You just have that finite amount of time. Um, and Harlequin was not buying. But then Silhouette opened up and they used the Harlequin framework, but they were looking for new American writers. I was new and I was American, so I got lucky with the timing.
Yeah. So you were in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, I have to confess that while I read about a book a week on the average, most of my reading is not romance novels. It's actually business nonfiction with a few biographies thrown in here or there.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to say, though, anytime I read a novel, especially a good one, and the only time I do, it's something that's highly recommended probably by more than one person, and I get completely captivated almost immediately and literally can't set the book down until I finish reading it. What is it from your standpoint that causes a novel to be great?
Well, for me, it's always the characters. The characters are plot. If you can have a great story, but if the people in it don't appeal to you or draw you in or make you care, then what's the point of the story? So I have to love or hate or relate to the characters in something that I'm reading and in something I'm writing.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is. I'm reading Black Hills right now,
Yeah.
and I wish I had finished it prior to the show, but I think it's 400 and some pages long. It's going to take me a while to get through it. I'll finish it, but what you said is exactly the case. You have such a wonderful talent, Nora, for creating a vivid picture. And like I said, right from the very first page, it made me feel like I was not only watching the story unfold. I mean, a good story causes you to have this picture, and everybody might have a slightly different picture of what that looks like, but it's so well explained that everybody has this picture of what it looks like. But the other thing that I noticed with Black Hills is that almost immediately I resonated with and started to feel all the emotions of Cooper Sullivan. And again, I'm not far enough along to talk about what happens at the end of the book or even toward the end. I'm probably about halfway through it, but it really you're right about that it's the characters, and you gravitate. Obviously, there are multiple characters in the story. But I think we tend to gravitate toward or relate with or just maybe sympathize with or empathize with a particular character.
Mm.
And we want to see how that turns out, don't we?
You want to know what happens to them, what they do, and why they do it, and you want somebody to win, or I do when I'm reading. I want somebody that overcomes and at the end gets what they want because they earned it.
Yes. And so you have a hand in that, obviously, figuratively and literally being able to make that happen, don't you?
Well, the characters really drive the story, so I have to trust them. Once I create them, I have to understand them well enough to know where they would go, what they would do, why they would do it.
And how does that happen?
I have no idea at all. Absolutely none.
But you do it so well in spite of that. Nora, one of the very basic things that I've learned about successful people, and this show is obviously called Life Excellence. So we have guests like you who have achieved significance in their chosen careers. And one of the things that I've learned is that successful people do what most people aren't willing to do. And for successful, prolific authors, and I know a few of them, that means they write. Right? They write consistently. They write a lot. Stephen King, for example, has said that he writes every day, including on Christmas Day. I'm interested in your schedule and how writing a lot plays out for you. What does your workday look like? I imagine you're writing all the time.
Every day. I'm an early riser, not by choice. It's just wiring. I get up. I have my long commute upstairs to my office, and I'll look at emails and headlines and all of that stuff for a while, and then I get to work, and I work all day, 6-8 hours consistently. That's my wiring again, and then I get up and I go work out because I've been sitting on my butt all day. And then I cook dinner and that's my day.
So it's really like going to work, not unlike
it's absolutely going to work. Yeah. That's my job. And I work my job 5-6 days a week consistently. I really love my job. That helps a lot. I have a fast pace. That helps a lot, but that's just wiring again. And I have a lot of discipline. I sit down and I stick with it.
Yes. Do you have daily production goals like word count or pages written? Or
what happens? But I'm going to work that 6 or 8 hours, whatever I write that day. Some days it's going to flow right out of me. Other days it's like carving in granite with a toothpick. It depends. But I'm going to sit there. I'm not going to walk away.
Yeah. Do you get stuck a lot?
I'm not writer's block stuck because I refuse to believe in it. If you walk away, you've broken the habit. Writing's a habit as well as a job and an art and a science.
Sure.
You have to keep up the habit. And if you walk away, you've given up and you can't fix what's wrong. I can write absolute crap on a page. It's just terrible. But I put something on the page and I can go back and fix it. If I've written nothing, I got nothing to work with.
Okay, so you keep writing. That's the advice.
Keep it up, yeah.
Don't stop.
The most important thing is to have written. The most important thing, because you can always fix it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've been around some very prolific writers and I'm not, I enjoy writing and have published a couple books, but I'm not prolific, certainly not compared to you or a few other people that I know. And they get asked a lot. I'm sure you get asked a lot for writing tips. How and the question usually comes out like this: I want to write a book. What do I do to write a book? And the answer that I always hear, and you tell me if this is the one you give, is write. Um,
Right.
I mean,
Ass
it
in the
sounds so
chair,
simple.
fingers on the keyboard, mind in the book. Those are
Yeah.
your 3 steps, and
It,
keep at it. And I think it's important to read. If you don't love to read, why do you think you can write? And you should write what you enjoy reading. Because if you don't enjoy it, why should anyone else?
mm, yeah, that's a great point. How many books are you writing a year on average? Do you have a consistent count or?
I don't know. I think 4.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
generally, but again, it depends. But I usually publish 2 Robbs, 2 in-depth books a year, and 1 suspense novel in the late spring, early summer, and then part of a trilogy um, in the fall. That's usual.
Okay. And that's remarkable for our listeners listening and our viewers watching this on our YouTube channel. They're hearing you talk about writing and publishing 4 books a year, and they're still trying to get that one book out of themselves. That's really quite impressive. Nora,
Well,
with as many.
there's no right way or wrong way. There's no someone else's pace isn't going to be your pace. But if you just keep going over the same thing, trying to polish it in, you're just going to polish it into nothing. At some point, you have to let go.
Yes. Yeah. With as many books as you've written, Nora, you obviously know what you need to do to be successful. I imagine that at this stage in your career, the process has become kind of formulaic, and you actually talked about that a little bit in terms of when you write certain books and how many of each book you write during the year. How do you approach each book? So starting from an original idea to the manuscript, and do you well, let's start there.
Well,
What does
I
that
hope I
approach
come
look
up.
like for
You
you?
have to come up with an idea, but idea is the easy part. It's formulating and articulating that idea into a story on paper. That's the sweaty part. Um, it's just page 1, chapter 1, every single time, every book you write, you've never written before, so you have to approach it as something brand new every time. You've never written this book about these people in this situation before. So, what excites you about it? What are you trying to say? What do you hope to say? And usually, what you think you're going to say or hope you're going to say, it's not what turns out anyway.
Mm,
For me, and again, everybody's process is different. I'm organic, we'll say, and that I don't do a lot of planning ahead of time. I do some research, but then I research as I go because I don't know until I need to know what I need to know. So I research through the first draft of the book, and I figure things out as I go. I don't go back. That's my process. I write however many pages I write today. Tomorrow I start where I left off. I don't go back and review that. I push forward until I write a lean, kind of crappy first draft, and then I go back to page 1, chapter 1, and start fixing it. And then I'll go over it a third time from page 1, chapter 1 to polish it out. Hopefully that's it, but if it needs more, I give it more.
and do you have input through that process from others, from an editor, or does
Absolutely
someone
not. They
read?
all better shut up and leave me alone. Absolutely not. Nobody sees it until I'm finished with it.
Oh,
Then I
really?
have input from my editor.
Okay.
And if she wants changes, we'll discuss. She's usually going to be right. She wants revisions or whatever, but she doesn't see it until I'm satisfied with it. And I send it to my agent and editor. And
Okay.
then I get the editorial input.
And how many revisions are typically made, like percentage wise? Are you
Like,
98%
there
done?
is absolutely no average or percentage. Um, a lot of times they're just fine, and you just have to tweak a tiny little bit here and there. Other times you may have to go back and do more. It totally depends. And it depends on how my editor, my first reader, she and my agent, and how they perceive it, because they're the first ones. And they're going to have their own viewpoint, which is what you want. Somebody
Sure.
who's not you to look at it and tell you where it's right, where it's wrong, or if you can do just a little bit to make it better.
And have you worked with that same person for a long time? Because I was thinking it would ideally be someone you trust, someone who
Oh,
knows
yeah,
you.
you've got to trust your editor, and I'm very lucky. On my agent, too. I've worked with my agent since 1980. I have
Hmm,
the same
uh,
agent.
almost right from the beginning.
She's amazing, best agent ever. And how long have I worked with Leslie Gelman is my editor, and I'm going to say since the mid 90s, I've worked
Okay.
with her.
So a long time with her
A
too.
long time.
Getting back to the ideas, I think most people would have the misconception that coming up with the ideas is the difficult part. You said
Yeah.
it's the easy
Ideas are a
part.
dime a dozen.
Yeah. So how do you know when you're ready to start writing? So I'm sure you have, I'll exaggerate and say a million. You have lots of ideas, lots of great stories. If you were telling me about every one of them, I'd say, oh, yeah, that's great. How do you know that that idea is ready to be put into book form, that you're ready to start
You
writing?
have to start it. You have to start telling it. That's the only way I know. Um, when I do the in-depth books, I've been doing them since the mid 90s, I guess. Um, I know the people, I know the world that I built way back when.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have to think about that, but what are they going to do this time? Why does it matter? Uh, she's a homicide lieutenant, so who dies and why? And all of that. If I'm doing a fantasy trilogy, what is the thread that's going to weave through the three books and be resolved at the end? How does each book stand on its own and tell a complete story until you move to the next? If I'm doing a suspense, uh, who are they? Where are they? Why are they in this situation? Or how does this situation happen that pulls them into it? So a lot of times I'll think of the setting first. Oh, I want to set a book in Alaska. That's actually how I started writing Northern Lights. I want to set a book in Alaska. Um, Other times it'll be I want to tell a book about this profession. I want to know more about why people do that. It just depends. And then you build, or I do, from there. I want to set a book in Alaska. Well, what are the people doing there? Why does this guy go to Alaska? And so forth and so on. So it just builds. And then I just have to start page one, chapter one. Let's get going and see what happens next. A
You
lot
make
of
it
what
sound like
ifs.
you make it sound like such an easy process,
Oh,
and
no,
it
it's
seems like
miserably hard. It is, but it's fun, even when it's miserably hard. Uh, and I'm doing it in my own home, uh, in my pajamas if I want to. Uh, I don't have to get in the car and drive to an office. I'm my own boss, and I am a really hard ass boss. I am
You don't
really
give yourself any slack?
no, I do not. And but that's why I've written so many books, because I don't take any guff from my employee.
Yeah. That's a good way to do business. You mentioned your home and having the I'll say the luxury, the comfort of being able to write there. I want to ask you about environment, both where you live and also where you work. I know you were born in Maryland and you've lived in the same small town for years. How important is environment to you, not only in terms of creating the lifestyle you want to live, but also in setting the tone for your writing?
Well, I don't actually live in a small town. I live a few miles outside of a small town,
Okay.
a very small
I
town.
stand corrected.
I live in a very rural part of Maryland in the foothills of the Blue Ridge. And I've lived here a very long time. I raised my kids here. Um, it's home. It's it for me. Uh, and that's very important that I love where I am. I could write anywhere. I have written anywhere. When I was on the road touring, or when I'm on vacation, or whatever. So, and I wrote with little kids, fighting in the next room. Um, so I can write anywhere, but this is my place where I'm happiest. It's home. Uh, and I love living in the country, living in the woods. I mean, I don't see any houses. It's just me, my husband
Mhm.
now, and the dogs, and trees, and my gardens, and that sort of thing. So, um, but I could write anywhere. That's the beauty of the profession, is whether you use a pen and paper or a computer or a tablet or whatever, it's portable, and you've always got your brain with you, hopefully.
So environment, the you mentioned your office in your home. It's not imperative that you write there. It's just it's more comfortable, and like
Yeah,
you
and
said,
it's
get up in
habit.
the morning and you go to
Yeah,
your office. But you
right.
feel like you could write. I mean, could you write on a subway in Manhattan or
If I
in?
had to, am I on deadline? I could write anywhere. I'm on deadline.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So that goes back to your discipline.
Well,
So
when we were in Italy, um, I guess 3 days, not for a long time. I'm with my family and I want to be with my family. But one day they all were going off, and the roads are very twisty and I get motion sickness. I'm going to stay back. And we had a beautiful place and have a beautiful view of Tuscany. And I sat outside at the big table and wrote. So I went
well, that
somewhere else, um, in my head, while
yeah,
while the place was quiet.
that sounds like a peaceful, serene setting that's conducive to writing.
Yeah, it was pretty great. But I'm also written in hotel rooms, and when my youngest grandson was born, I finished a book. I was helping out was there first. There, my son and his wife, my daughter-in-law, and I wrote the last of the book with the infant and the crook while they were taking a nap. You can do it if you want it badly enough.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah,
If you want it badly enough,
yeah,
Nora, one of the most interesting things I learned about you, and this was years ago, was realizing that you're JD Robb.
yeah.
I love bookstores, and I remember for years being in I would walk by the fiction section on the way to business nonfiction, but I would look and they have the bestsellers. And it seemed like if there were 10 or 12 books, that 3 or 4 of them would be yours. And I noticed that and didn't know you at that time, obviously, but knew at least knew that you were a best-selling author, and repeatedly. But the other thing that I noticed, and I remember this vividly, was seeing this guy, or so I thought, named J.D. Robb, and I thought, wow, that's interesting too. Like there are these novelists who consistently have these books on the New York Times bestseller list. And I remember when I learned that you are JD Robb, and I was so surprised, and I thought it was so awesome that you were writing under both names, under your name obviously and the pen name JD Robb. How was it that you started writing under a pseudonym? And where did the name JD Robb come from? I'm guessing Robb is some form of Roberts, but where does the rest come from?
Well, the name, it's my son's initials, my two sons, Jason and Daniel. And that's where that came from. A lot of people think, oh, she wanted to have people think she was a man. That really didn't enter into it. I thought it would be cool to use my son's initials. And I didn't want to take a pseudonym. My agent and my publisher at the time, the amazing Phyllis Gran at Putnam, Phyllis called me one day and she said in that New York voice, Nora, you need a hobby, because I write fast and they were having trouble keeping up with me. And I said, I don't want a hobby. And she said, you could take another name, and I don't want to do that. I didn't want to write a book that didn't have my name on it. Why should I go to all that trouble and slap somebody else's name on it, or a fake name? And then my agent said to me one day, which is only one reason she is the best agent ever, said, Nora, there's Pepsi, there's Diet Pepsi, and there's caffeine-free Pepsi. And the light bulb went, oh, it's marketing. It's marketing, and I could be two popular brands. Mm-hmm. So I said, I'll try this if, and only if, I can do something different than what I do under my own name, because I didn't see the purpose. And so I had this idea for the character of Eve Dallas. This is very dark and bitchy, and a murder cop in the near future in New York. And I said, it would be fun to play with that. I don't know I never knew what to do with her until this. This was the opportunity. So I started with a 3-book contract, what I thought would be a trilogy. And boy, did I fall for that cast of characters. And I had so much fun writing them. They were much darker than my usual stuff at that time. And the books took off under they kept my name out of it, J.D. Robb. But the books took off, and so another 3-book contract. Let's do that. And now it's been 50-some, I think I've written, of the in-depth series.
And how long did you go writing under J.D. Robb before you went public?
Gosh, it was years before they let out that it was me as J.D. Robb. I think it was Betrayal and Death, because he is the tag, you've been betrayed. And J.D. Robb is a pseudonym for Nora Roberts.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. What a great story. And how is that received? So I don't know this for sure, but I imagine you have such a large group of raving fans at this point, probably in each genre. But when it became public that you were J.D. Robb, how is that received by your Nora Roberts fans?
There's a lot of overlap there, and there already was. If you're an avid reader, you often don't just stick with one genre. You just want a good story. At least that's certainly in my case. But there were a lot of men who thought J.D. Robb was a guy, who were kind of stunned. And women still tend to buy more books than men do. Men will pick them up because they're sitting on the coffee table or the nightstand. And I know I've had several female readers tell me that their husband or boyfriend or something went on about the Robb books. And boy, that guy, and when they said that's actually Nora Roberts, it was like, no way. No, she's a girl. She can't write this stuff. But they like the books, so suckered them into it.
Yeah, you dupe them. I mentioned earlier, Nora, that successful people do what others aren't willing to do. Besides consistent writing, what other qualities have gone into creating the level of success you've achieved? You mentioned discipline being one of them.
Oh yeah, drive and discipline. They're pretty important. Um, a lot of times people are out shopping or having lunch and taking a day off, and I don't do much of that. I don't go out, have lunch with the girls. Um, I have time with my girlfriends. I'm going away for a week with a group of them, and that's going to be great. But I'll probably work a little bit while we're there. Um, but I don't think I can sacrifice anything. This is the life I want to live, so I'm pretty lucky to be able to live it on my terms and to be able to do something I love and make a really nice living so that I can live this life that's really fairly simple in the long run. Live in the
Yeah.
same house. It's quiet. Um, we don't have staff or anything like that. We're private people. We don't want all of that. So, we take care of things ourselves mostly.
Yeah. What do you like to do when you're not writing? So around
But
town, what do you like to do when you're not writing around town
besides,
or
well, reading and TV, I love TV. I like stories. I love to read. I love um, movies and television. And this time of year and in the spring through the fall, I love to garden. I have extensive gardens. They're a lot of work, but they give me a lot of pleasure. Fortunately, my husband likes yard work too. He likes to be outside and do stuff, so I can count on him to dig holes if I can't do it.
I'm guessing that you're asked to speak at writing conferences and to share your advice with aspiring writers. I'm not going to ask you for any more writing advice, but more broadly, what advice do you have, Nora, for our listeners and viewers who want to be the absolute best in their chosen profession, whatever that might be?
Well, I think you have to practice. You have to do it. You have to put yourself out there and be prepared to fail or not to reach the pinnacle as you see it. Not everybody's going to be the best. You be the best that you can. Um, if I sit down to write a book, I just want to write the best book I can at that time. May not be the best that I've ever written. It's certainly not the best book ever written in the history of books, but it's the best I can do. And I think it's really important to understand the best you can do and then try to do better next time.
You mentioned pinnacle. You've accomplished so much in your career and in your life. You have, unlike a lot of people listening, people watching, most people in the world who won't reach the pinnacle of their field. You did that a long time ago, and you've remained there ever since. What are you most proud of having accomplished?
Oh, raising my boys, I guess. That's what comes down to it. I, I love my work, but I mean, family. Uh, I was a single parent for a while, and that's tough. That's tough stuff. Um, I have a I have a beautiful family. I have terrific grandkids. Um, I have a pretty great husband, and I have a really nice body of work that I can be proud of. Um, but other people judge the work. I can only, you know, I don't write anything that I don't love, but really the reader's the one that judges the work.
Will there ever be a time when you say, when you, I guess, put down the pen or close the laptop and decide that you're done, or do you think you'll just write forever as long as you
Well, I
can?
don't know what I would do with myself or with the stories inside my head. Um, I love the work, and like I said, my commute is up a flight of steps, so that's no hardship. Um, and I love what I do. I can't imagine what I would do with myself all day if I wasn't writing.
Well, I know your readers are happy to hear you say that and are looking forward to the ongoing development of the stories and the characters that you write about. Nora, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's great to see you, and I really appreciate you taking time to share your wonderful wisdom and insight.
Oh, well, thank you, Brian. It's been great. It's nice to see you too. I'm not seeing a lot of people since COVID, so it's nice to see you.
I understand. Thank you. And hopefully you'll start to see more people and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll see each other again soon.
You take care of yourself.
Thanks. You too, Nora. Thanks for tuning into Life Excellence. Please support the show by subscribing, sharing it with others, posting about today's show with novelist Nora Roberts on social media, and leaving a rating and review. You can learn more about me at brianbartes.com. Until next time, dream big dreams and make each day your masterpiece.